It is difficult to talk about democracy in Cameroon, especially the return to multi-party politics in the 1990s, without mentioning the Social Democratic Front, SDF. Since its creation in 1990, the SDF has been a counterforce to government policies, holding authorities to account and shaping the evolution of the country through its proposals. The last few years has, however, seen a steady decline in the number of MPs as well as municipal councillors in the country. The situation, which has also been worsened by the socio-political crisis in the northwest and southwest regions, which has made the party suffer a great deal. In the midst of multiple challenges now rocking the country, does the party have what it takes to bounce back and keep its legacy? The second in command of the party is right here with us. This is her talk. Our guest tonight is an experienced aviation expert specialized in operations and management. He joined the SDF party in 1991 and has never looked back since then, playing a significant role in the party's evolution. After 3 decades at the service of the party, the man seen as a long-term successor to the iconic chairman John Fundi is now the Member of Parliament for Wouri Centre here in the Littoral region and the first Vice President of the Social Democratic Front. Honorable Joshua Osih, welcome to Her Talk.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I wish a very nice evening or a nice program for all your viewers.
Exactly. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Yeah. We saw during the last municipal elections, the party did not perform so well compared to the elections in 2012. And many people are saying that the party is declining. Permit me to ask you, how well is the SDF?
Well, 2 things. First of all, there were no elections in 2012. Yeah, in 2012, that's right. And secondly, you mentioned that you see me as whatever the word was, a long-term...
Some people see you as a long-term successor.
Well, we're not in a monarchy. We're in a political party, and each and every member of the SDF who wants to vie to be the national chairman of the party, if that's what we're trying to talk about, when a convention comes up, that person can put up his candidature and stand for that election and go on. So there is nothing like heritage. We're not in a family. We are a family, of course, but the rules are not like the rules of a family, and so we have to make sure that when we present things, when we present things, that they should not be seen otherwise or misconstrue the reality, because that's not the way it works. Now, I guess you were talking about 2013 or maybe 2007, whatever the year is you want to choose. I want to tell you that we know exactly where we are. We know where we're going to, and we understood from the onstart 2015-16 that where the crisis in the northwest and southwest was taking us is that we will not be able to have our base. Each political party has a base, and we have our base. And we decided to prefer going in because we had earlier on in a convention decided that we will never boycott an election. So we decided that based on the fact that we are going in for elections, we are not going to hold another convention to cancel that resolution. We decided to go into these elections knowing exactly where we were heading to. It was either we will have it all or probably we'll have nothing. But we understood that what we call elections and what a Democrat calls an election is not what is going to happen in the northwest and the south. Let me be very clear with you. What is happening today in Cameroon is very far from our own idea of what an election is supposed to be. But since our party was created in 1990 on the premise, notably in Section 3 of our Constitution, that we're going to get to power through the ballot, we cannot be seen as those trying to get to power through weapons, arms, or violence or whatsoever. So we stay true to ourselves, and we understand as well, and we are the first to pay the price for the fact that it may take us much longer than we had hoped in 1990, and that many people who joined the party hope to get to power, but we have to stay true to our ideals, true to our values, and that's why we went in for these elections. We decided that we will not bow out to the Ambazonians and will not bow out to the CPDM regime, and we will stand where we are supposed to stand, whatever it takes, doing everything possible for nobody to be hurt, because we're in the middle of a violent crisis, for nobody to lose his or her life. And that was the reason why when there was supposed to be a second rerun, we refused to show up at the Supreme Court. Simply because the risks that we're going to take to come up a third time, we understood that most of those attacking our candidates are not secessionists per se, but are vigilante groups that have been put in place by ministers originating from the southwest and northwest and so on. They are people of the CPDM trying to kill us, and so we are not going to give our lives for what we stand for at this time, because the real battle is still ahead of us, and we need all those standing with us, aligned with us for those real battles to be present in the days coming. So it's not a question about what is happening today or what happened yesterday. We know where we want to go to. We want social justice for this country. We want equal opportunities for this country. We want a federal state in this country, and we're going to fight for that till the last man standing. And that's why we went in for these elections. We are not in a, we do not pretend that elections are held in Cameroon in a normal way. I think each and every Cameroonian knows that it is very difficult for elections to give the results that reflect the true aspiration of the Cameroonian people. But we participate, because not participating is giving a blank check to the CPDM regime. And that's why we're participating, and we're fighting, and we're moving on. Today we're in Parliament and in a few councils. We'll continue fighting as we've been fighting all these days. I think most of the democratic advances this country has known so far come from the SDF. Most of the democratic advances that we will have in the coming 3-4 years will still come from the SDF, and that's why I think it was a noble thing to be in these elections, to go for these elections, to fight for the Cameroonian people, to fight and to show to the world that we're not backing away from the Ambazonian forces, from their violence, from their threats, from their blackmails, and we're not backing away from the corrupt CPDM regime that is trying to navigate on this wave put in place by these Ambazonian forces to try to conquer politically a sphere that is not theirs. And we're here to make sure that our children understand what went through the last 4 years. We're here to make sure that the resolution of the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest goes in the interest of the people of the Northwest and Southwest. And I'm happy today to tell you that we're still very much at the forefront of that fight, and we are in Parliament, we are in the institutions, so we have a voice. We could have backed out and said, okay, we are afraid of dying, we are afraid of standing, we are afraid of participating, but that's not the SDF. Our ADN is courage, our ADN is power, and our DNA, sorry, I was speaking in French. Our DNA is courage, our DNA is power, and that's what we showed. And there is nothing better we could have done at that given time, and we will continue fighting on it. So we're not in a situation where I would say we're losing ground. What is happening is that the regime is doing everything possible for our voters to be disenfranchised. So if you take the last couple of votes, go back to 2007, for instance, go back to 2002, you can even go back to 97, but I want to start in 2002, okay? If you look at the total vote count that we've been having in Cameroon in the pseudo-elections that are being organized by ELECAM, you see that there is a constant. And what happened after 2013 started already in 13, but went further in 18 and got confirmed in 2020, is that the regime in Yaoundé has made it such that Anglophones are no longer allowed to vote. So we told them in 2018, and I think we were supported by the UN Secretary General, we're supported by many good-thinking organizations and people, that we have a national election. If you registered to vote in Toko, Mundemba, Batibo, Kumbo, Santa, wherever, and because of the nonsense going on in the northwest and southwest, you find yourself displaced in Douala, Yaoundé, Bolova, Garwa, wherever, it's a national vote. So if you have a voter's card, you should be allowed to vote where you find yourself. Or if that is too much, let us ask those people that are displaced, that have a voter's card, to present their voter's card so that they can vote.
And their votes counted.
And their votes counted. But Mr. Biya, true to himself, wanted once again to disenfranchise people from the northwest and the southwest, and so refused. And so we found ourselves in a situation where 800,000 people were denied their right to vote. And exactly the same thing happened again in 2020. Probably they were hoping that we will not stand. Probably they were hoping that we will bow out, but we didn't do it because we're not in politics for Mr. Biya. We're not fighting this battle for him. We're not fighting it against him. We're fighting for the Cameroonian people, and as long as this country remains and we have a hope that this country will be better tomorrow, we'll stand true to ourselves, to our values, to what we stand for, and we'll continue fighting democratically.
All right, Honorable, I had a copy of the Guardian Post which I wrote earlier this month that there were some members of the SDF who were scheming their way into government. Are you aware of this statement? Well, you know, we're an open organization.
We have the last time we made an inventory, we were more than 100,000 members. Okay. Right now, I cannot tell you how many we are because of all what is going on. We have decided to put a hold on party contributions for various reasons because most of our basics points are not functioning, are affected by the crisis in the northwest and southwest. But, you know, Mr. Associate, you can be a member of the SDF I'm not aware of.
Sure.
And you can do what you want. Okay, but that doesn't engage the SDF. What engages the SDF is what the SDF does officially. And we have structures. We are the only political party in Cameroon that meets regularly, that has been holding its conventions the way a democratic party holds a convention, that has been holding its National Executive Committee meetings and holding meetings at the region, holding meetings at the local levels, that is in each electoral district, that is the equivalence of a council area. And so I see you're a good member of the party. And you will understand that people in there can do what they want. We are an open organization. We're not a closed organization like a company, okay, where we can say so wherever someone in there does something, it doesn't engage the party. What engages the party is what the party does. And what I can tell you with authority is that right now, sitting in front of you, the SDF isn't engaged in any talks with whatever party that be to go into whatever government, be it in Cameroon, Gabon, Chad, or wherever. We're not engaged in any such talks at this time. And if anybody is interested to make use of the know-how of the Social Democratic Front and to make use of the fact that they have been unable to solve the Anglophone crisis, for instance, and they believe that those from the Social Democratic Front, having had a majority of locally elected people in the northwest and south, could probably bring a solution, then they will come up to us and you'll be the first to know. The day they come up to us and say, look, we need you, we'll put it, the Cameroonian people will know that they have knocked at our door and this is what is on the table and this is what we say. So, but right now we're not interested, and you know, as you say in Pidgin, I always like making mention of this when people ask me this question on the streets, is that, as you say in Pidgin, now when Koki don't turn way off and get the biggest share. So it is not today that they should be looking at us, they should have looked at us ere long. Today we are really resolved to bring in place, to work towards putting in place solutions for this country for tomorrow. We are fully engaged in being part of those who will govern this country tomorrow or governing it ourselves. We know that in the coming months or years, but most probably in the next 1, 2, 3 years, there will be elections again in Cameroon. We're preparing towards that. That's why we're not concentrated at making noise left and right. That's why you see us a bit less on social media and so on, because we are focused. We know that this country needs to be saved. We know that where Mr. Biya has put this country is just not where we're supposed to be, and there is a lot of work ahead of us, and we need to be ready, and that's what we're working towards.
Yeah, you just mentioned that one of the pressing files of the SDF is the Anglophone crisis. When you look at the situation in the northwest and southwest regions, what reading do you make?
Well, I think it's most of the time when I think of it all on my own, I find myself more or less in tears, because it's a regret. I don't even want to say it's a regretful. It's a pitiful situation in which we are, because people took upon themselves to put themselves into positions of leadership by virtue of social media without any responsibility of the outcomes of what they're calling other people to do. I fundamentally understand where we're coming from. I fundamentally agree with the fact that the way the country is running is not what it is supposed to be. I fundamentally agree with the fact that the southwest and the northwest, or let me say that the heritage of the Fumban Accords are far from where it's supposed to be. I fundamentally believe that it is evident that as a minority we've been paying a double price in this country, but I also fundamentally agree that the way of solving that problem is not what we're doing. I think that we had been going a long way. We were focused to go towards solving this problem. That's exactly what I wanted to say. But people at one point wanted a shorter cut, not knowing that the easiest thing is to start a war. The most difficult thing
is to sustain it.
Is to not only sustain it, is to stop it.
And to stop it as well.
Is to stop it. And that's where we find ourselves. Everybody understands that the biggest stupidity you could have wished for our country, or for the northwest or the southwest, is what is going on there right now. Whatever you think, be you a separatist, be you a whatever, what is going on there right now, let's be frank with ourselves, is pure stupidity. You cannot be killing civilians day in, day out, from whatever side you're killing them, and believing that you can solve a problem with that. That's not the way it works. You cannot be saying that you are fighting for Anglophones, and all those you kill are Anglophones. That doesn't work. You cannot have some sort of a monopoly of being Anglophone. You cannot pretend to be more Anglophone than I am. You cannot pretend to be more Anglophone than you are. We are all Anglophones. We all have a right to an opinion. And the minimum we have to do is to respect each another's opinion. It might not go the way we think, but we cannot solve that with violence. So now we find ourselves in the middle of a spiral of violence, in some sort of a vicious circle, and everybody complains, everybody accuses the other, everybody wants to do. No. Now that we are in there, the price to come out of it is high, is huge. And let me tell you that if we don't work it out carefully, once we come out of this cycle of violence, whatever the outcome, if we don't work it out carefully, we'll be much further behind than where we were when it started. And that is my biggest problem today. How can people come back to reason? Let's talk. Let people put down their arms wherever they stand. Let's talk. Where we are going to is taking us nowhere. And the grievances that were put on the table are not, and I'm saying it really with a very deep heart, are not comparable to the lives we're losing. We might as well end up tomorrow no longer having the Anglophone Cameroonians some people pretend are defending, because they are going every day in their numbers. So let's stop the violence. Let's stop it. We have a responsibility as Anglophones, wherever we find ourselves on the divide, to make sure we stop this violence.
Now, you have earlier on called on the head of state to see how he can bring the crisis to an end. And the SDF for close to 3 years now has been saying that the head of state and the government are not doing enough to solve the crisis. What must government do concretely to ensure that the crisis ends at this moment?
Well, now you're going to vote. You vote for Mr. Biya, and you ask Joshua Osih to give you the solution of what Mr. Biya is supposed to do.
Well, perhaps
when you go into a restaurant and you ask for kwakoko, if they give you bobolo, you have a problem. Okay, and it's the cook, it's not you.
Always been,
so what I'm saying is that when you are in government, when you are in government, one of your obligations, your responsibilities, is to give security to each and every citizen. The first indication of a failed state is when you come into town and each house is behind a big barrier. Each house is behind a big fence. In some failed states, they're even behind electric fences. Because the responsibility of security, of peace, is in the hands of those who are in government, not in the hands of the opposition.
But so the opposition can make a proposal. That's what
we say that in 2018, we said that if we come to power, we'll stop the war inside 100 days. Because we talk to the people, because we are close to the people, because we know where the problems are, and we know how we can solve them. Now, you taking a president who created the Anglophone problem in the first place, he was brought back to Cameroon to create that problem. He has been at the forefront of that problem since the beginning. And each time he succeeded one step, he got promoted. He got promoted after 72 to Prime Minister in 75. When he concluded with the oil and everything in 77, he got promoted into the presidency by his French cronies. And now he's president for life. And you want to use that person who put his entire career into, let us say it, making sure that the domination of the Anglophone people is real. You want to use him to solve the problem?
So you're saying the head of state cannot solve it?
He cannot solve it.
So what is the SDF?
It has been 4 years that we have been having a war that even his lieutenants inside the CPDM could have stopped inside 30 days. It has been 4 years. Everybody agrees that what is going on is unimaginable. It's something you cannot explain. It's something that, I mean, when Chad got attacked by Boko Haram, the next day Idris Deby stood in a jeep and crossed Cameroon without the permission of anybody, with his entire army behind him, and went into Nigeria and gave those guys a severe flocking, a run for their lives, killed more than 180 of them, and 5 days later went back to Chad. You will never hear of Boko Haram in Chad any longer. That's what a head of state stands for. A head of state, if you have the northwest and southwest burning, you should be there. You should be there every day. You should be in Mamfe. You should be in Bengui. You should be in Kumbo. You should be there. Talk to the people. Solve the problem. Don't sit in a bunker in Yaoundé and call people to do the work. You are not a head of state. A head of state is right there in front. He is the chief of staff of the army. He's supposed to be the first on the field. That's why he's chief of staff. He's paid for that. Our tax money pays him to do that job. We do not pay him to sit behind and send others to do his job. So he has a responsibility to go down there and solve the problem. And the Constitution gives him the right to resign. If he believes that the problem is above him, let him resign. Let him resign. Let elections be organized. And let those who think that they can solve that problem be elected and go and solve the problem. Let's stop pretending as if something somebody could not do 4 years ago, he can suddenly do it today. So I think we have exhausted every avenue, maximum amount of patience that we could have with trying to believe that he can have a secret bullet in one of his pockets to solve this problem. It's just not there. It is just not there.
So you said the SDF can solve the problem in 100 days. How can the SDF go about it if today the SDF takes over power?
Well, I think that first of all, you have to address the root cause of the problem. Secondly, and that's probably the first point, I didn't come to STV today, how can I say, to share,
to share,
to help Mr. Biya in continuing to fail. What I'm trying to say is that you need to address the root issues. You need to address the problem of the de-radicalization of those radicalized. You need to address the socio-economic problems in the Northwest and South, and you need actually to have a nationwide program. You need to address the issues as well in the far north, in the Adamawa, in all those places, because there is no need to stop a fire in one part of the house and the other part is burning. So you need to have some sort of a holistic approach to all of this, and that holistic approach is not simple, but it's clear. People want equal opportunities, they want social justice, they want to belong. And if you are ruling this country, if you are the head of this country, you need to make sure that each and every Cameroonian belongs to this society, belongs to this country, and you need to start creating a nation. We have a huge problem of, I would call it an identity crisis. This identity crisis comes from the fact that we were put together into some triangle to live together, but nobody has really worked on the fact that each and every other country, including the most successful, diverse countries like Switzerland and even the USA and Canada, have worked on the question of identity. We've never worked on it. What is it to be Cameroonian today? We don't know. And that is why people feel being from the north, feel being Anglophones, feel being this, feel being that, and they never feel being Cameroonian. So if you're in government, you need to work on that. That needs to be a full-time job, making sure that we work on what is our national identity. Why are we together? We shouldn't be together just to pay tax. We shouldn't be together just because we have no chance of having another identity card. We should be together because we belong. And today, let me tell you, if you go to, I'll take an example of the US. Just take the East Coast, you take the DC metropolitan area. If you go there during vacations or wherever, you will have a Ghanaian party. You will have a Nigerian party. You will have an Ethiopian party. And then you'll have a Bassa party. You'll have a Bangante party. You will have
a
Bayangi party. You will have a Fako party. You will have a Kumba Boy party and an Oroko party the same day. I mean, it just shows that we still need to work on our national identity. We need to work on what we are, and that is the role of the government. It's not the role of individuals. It's not the role of political parties formulate. And we say we're ready to do that. We want to do that. If you give us a chance to be in power, we will do that. We will work on that to make sure that tomorrow we understand what it means to be Cameroonians. Not only being proud, to be proud of something, you first of all need to understand what it is, and you need to belong. And how do you belong to a nation? It means that each and every Cameroonian benefits from the fact that he is Cameroonian. What is happening today is that we have an oligarchy in Yaoundé, and you have 24.5 million Cameroonians working for probably 100, 200,000 people sitting in there sucking us dry. That is what is happening. And that is why all these people cannot belong, because they believe that they're cheated, and they believe, rightfully so, that they're cheated by a little group of people who sit in Yaoundé and dictate what is supposed to happen. And until we correct that, you cannot come and correct the other root causes of the Anglophone crisis and all the other crises that are boiling up and those who have that have been in place ever since. So we need to work on that fundamentally, and there are many more things that need to be done. But the fundamental part of a nation is that each and every individual needs to belong. That's why I always say that when I meet foreign organizations or ambassadors or whatever you get, I even talked to the UN Secretary at one point. The problem when you try to look at the issues in Cameroon and solve them is that we very often believe that we're talking about 25 million Cameroonians. That's wrong. We're talking about probably 25 million people living in a place that the UN decided to call Cameroon. In there, you have probably a maximum amount of 2 million Cameroonians, the ones who go and vote and who believe in the future of this country. And inside those 2 million, you probably have 200,000 citizens who do everything to make sure this country strives. And the others are simply there. And we need to transform these inhabitants into Cameroonians. And we need to transform these Cameroonians into citizens.
Is it a lack of political education?
It's not a lack of education. The responsibility is not in the population. The responsibility is in Etudi. The responsibility is in Yaoundé. It is not, you do not come to this world choosing to be Cameroonian. But when you come into your family, into your village, into your country, you need to grow up being proud of it. Not just because of the name or because of what. No, because you build a narrative behind all of that. That makes you proud. And if you want to go back to nostalgia, when you talk about Southern Cameroons today, what is the singular difference about what Southern Cameroons was and what Cameroon is today? It is not about the Yoke Dam. The Yoke Dam cannot even give enough electricity for Muyuka today. It is not about CAT or CDC or all of that. No, it's not about that. People put that ahead because the real arguments are not put on the table. That nostalgia is one of belonging and one of being proud. One of coming out, showing up, being excessively proud of belonging to a group that has gone away. So the biggest difference we have today between what Cameroon was prior to 61 and what it is today is the fact that many Cameroonians are even ashamed to be Cameroonians today. You see people hiding their passports at the airport. They bring it out at the last minute. Something that when we used to go to school, you'll put your passport up in the air when you get to the police control. Yeah. So that's where we are. And we need to work on that. Because if people do not believe they're Cameroonians, they don't believe in this country, they don't believe in the project we have for this country. Well, as a matter of fact, today Mr. Biya doesn't even have a project for this country. That's one of the fundamental issues we have. And if people do not believe in this country, what simply happens is that each and everyone grows up with the prospect of leaving this country, of going away. They simply hear, just as day-old chicks, just waiting to get to 21 days, if you know about chicken farming, and then to go to the farm, to the next farm, because they're just here to get to a certain stage to go away. And once they go away there, they want to reclaim their land, they want to reclaim their country, they want to reclaim their nation, and that's why you have this big tension between the diaspora and those in power in Cameroon. And one other thing that I want to add on this is that contrary to what Yaoundé is trying to put on the table, there is no problem between the diaspora and Cameroon.
But how can
and Cameroonians?
It's been a very long
there is a problem between the diaspora and the Yaoundé regime. And the Yaoundé regime, whether we like it or not, doesn't represent Cameroon today. It doesn't represent what Cameroon is. The same people in the diaspora who take their stance for each thing against, they do not do that against you. They do not do that against the person on the streets. They do not do that against the mother cooking fish or so. They do that against Mr. Biya and his regime. And so people now turn around and they say these people are all anti-patriotic. Patriotism is not supporting the insane. Patriotism is supporting the country. And if the president who is in place is no longer able to deliver for the country, it means that those not supporting that president are probably more patriotic than those supporting the president. But anyway, that's a whole different debate. What I'm just trying to say is that let us not get mixed up between the position of this entire diaspora since we got to that point, and trying to follow the narrative of the government, placing them in some sort of nutshell of people who are not patriotic. No, these are people who dream of a better Cameroon, and the clash they have with the regime is that we in Cameroon, we living in Cameroon, probably have a higher degree of resilience because of our daily hardships, a bigger amount of resilience than they have, and so they are probably more in a hurry to solve the problems than we ourselves living here.
Now, some critics have said that Parliament is doing very little to solve the challenges, particularly the Anglophone crisis. What do you think is the fundamental issue? Why can Parliament not really come in concretely to ensure that this crisis and other issues that are rocking the country are being solved?
Well, I think you don't have to forget that we have a constitution. We're not in England, we're not in Nigeria, we're in Cameroon. And the role of Parliament in Cameroon is not to solve crisis. The role of Parliament is to legislate and to control government action. And I think we've been doing more or less a good job as far as it can go now. The Cameroonian people, the few Cameroonians who go and register to vote, decided to give the regime, the autocratic regime, an obese majority in Parliament. So once they have that obese majority, let us not come and pretend as if once they get there, they change. They're the same people. So you simply have 150 junior Biyas who are sitting there and doing what senior Biya wants. And so you'll never have big changes. But the role of Parliament is not to go out and solve a problem. The role of Parliament is to control government action and to legislate. And I think at that stage, opposition parties, even if they are in very small numbers, have been doing an immense job in Parliament. The Anglophone crisis wouldn't be a public debate if the Social Democratic Front group in Parliament didn't take it up. If we didn't block the Prime Minister, if we didn't block the finance bill from passing, if we didn't block the various bills that came out in Parliament, in order for the Anglophone crisis to be tabled in Parliament and to be discussed, would not be here. The CPDM refused it to be discussed. The CPDM for 3 years in a row, the CPDM group told us that there is no problem in the Northwest and the Southwest, simply because they wanted the elections to come and to have all the seats. So now that they have had, that's what we told them recently, now that you have all the seats, we were not in for elections, we were in for the future of the Cameroonian people, for the future of the people of the Northwest and the Southwest. Now that you have had all the seats, can we now sit and talk about this problem? There is no reason for you to continue stopping us from talking about it. Okay, and we hope that we'll get there. But our role in Parliament is to make sure that those suffering, those in the streets, those who need a voice, have that voice. And that's why we're there. We're not there for anything else. And those voices have been heard. And I can tell you one thing, if we were not in Parliament, this country would be a whole different place today.
Now, talking about those who are affected by this problem, we know that the youths have bore the brunt of this crisis. They have suffered a lot. And one of your major preoccupations is youth empowerment. Recently in Parliament, you organized, there was a forum where you talked about the youths and economic patriotism. Tell us more. How far have you gone with that?
Well, first of all, I want to agree with you on the fact that the youth and women, or let me put it the right way, women and the youth are paying the highest price in this crisis. I happen to have put my mandate, as you said, in youth empowerment through youth employment, entrepreneurship, and so on, because I feel that they need a voice. I feel that it's a fight worth fighting. And on the 23rd of June, I happened to coordinate, lead the youth advocacy network in Parliament called REG, from its French acronym. And we decided to organize with all the colleagues Made in Cameroon Day, which was extremely successful. We invited members of government, we invited young Cameroonian companies who are specialized in producing added value locally. 497 of them showed up. We invited parliamentarians, all parliamentarians, 120 something of them showed up. And we had the role was, the objective of the day was to sensitize ministers and parliamentarians on the opportunities that are available, on the capacity of producing added value by young Cameroonians, and valorizing these young Cameroonians, giving them a window to express themselves and showcase what they can do, and as well try to accompany them and maybe look at means and ways of linking them up with these people in decision positions so that their young startups can grow at a faster pace. I was extremely pleased with what happened, because the government took up the challenge immediately, and a couple of days later the Prime Minister himself made it as a point of reference to put the Made in Cameroon in as the heart of the budgetary orientation debate that we had in June. And the Minister of Finance and Minister of Economy presented us some measures that are already being taken for the next finance bill, notably to increase the customs duty on rice and on flour and on imported fish and so on, to make sure that our local products have a better market. Positioning. And what I wanted to say is that I was impressed by the number of startups presented by young Cameroonians of Anglophone extraction who were probably not in a real situation of internally displaced, but who were obliged to reinvent themselves as a result of this crisis. And so you will be pleased to hear that probably nearly 30 to 40% of all those young companies, most of them startups, were actually put in place by people coming out of these hardships. And so that was very encouraging for me, and we continue working on it. We're going up to Marwa in December. We'll be in the littoral in March, so it's a whole big project that we're working on, and we do hope that in the next 2 or 3 years we would have helped a certain number of young Cameroonians to be independent.
Yeah, how important is this concept, particularly with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has really affected the economy?
Well, I think you raise a very good point here. The reason why we stressed on organizing that day is because there is a whole shift of paradigm shift that imposes itself due to this COVID-19 situation. And today we understand, for instance, that Russia will probably no longer produce as much wheat or export as much wheat as it used to. So either the prices will come up or scarcity will come into place, and so on and so forth. So we need to, COVID-19 obliges us to look into ourselves, into what we can produce and how we can transform it.
But a blessing is in disguise, if you can say so.
It's not a blessing in disguise. It is a blessing when you look at it from my point of view. But from our point of view, it's an opportunity. You always have an inconvenience and an opportunity in every issue. And the biggest opportunity of COVID-19 is for us to stop being dependent on importation and start producing locally. There is actually no reason why we do not produce shoes. There is no reason why we do not produce suits. There is no reason why we do not produce cameras. There is no reason why we don't produce cars and so on. There is absolutely no reason you can give me why we don't produce light bulbs and so on. I always say the irony with Cameroon, the Cameroonian economy, is that we export timber and import toothpicks. There is no reason why we don't produce toothpicks. And that's why we organized that day, to show to the world that Cameroon can, that Cameroonians can. And we were blessed with the presence of all these young entrepreneurs who really showcased their know-how, and I was the first impressed. And we have to continue working on that. And government needs to take policies that promote all this local, because tomorrow we can no longer depend on importation. So we need to move back to what we have and transform it to make it such that the society can consume it. And we need to start consuming what we produce and stop consuming what we import.
All right, Honorable, the last question for the day. 2025 is just around the corner. Where does the SDF go from here as it faces that electoral year, if I can put it that way?
Well, the SDF has an uphill task and challenge that it faces in the coming weeks and months. Our base has been completely shattered by the ongoing crisis. Rest assured that if the crisis stops tomorrow morning, the shattered base will come back together. I have no doubt on it. So it's not destroyed. It's in pieces. To bring it back together, that's a job we can do. Right now, Mr. Biya doesn't want the crisis to stop. So we are on a plan B. If the crisis doesn't stop, where do we go to? So we're working on that. I will not come and disclose strategy here with you. Yeah. But we as well believe that elections might be, or maybe much sooner than 2025. Legislative, local, presidential, whatever. But fundamentally, you have to understand that we have to remain true to our agenda, true to our manifesto, true to our values. We are social democrats. We stand for equal opportunity, social justice. We stand for values that are deep in our DNA. And we fundamentally believe that the way this country is run right now is not a question of people, it's a question of system. And the system needs to be changed, destroyed, or transformed. And that's what we're working on. So we understand that the form of the state for this country to survive must be federal. We can discuss about what you think that federal form must be. I think after so many years, everybody agrees that decentralization doesn't work. Everybody agrees that centralization is not the solution. Mr. Biya himself understood it. That's why he called for decentralization. Now we understand that decentralization doesn't work. We need to go one step further. So in the form of the state, we believe that it must be federal. We believe that there must be a much bigger dose of parliamentary power. So we need to break down the vertical axis and increase the horizontal axis of powers. We believe that that's me personally. I believe that maybe we should not go straight to a parliamentary regime, but we could go to a semi-parliamentary regime like South Africa, where the president is elected by parliament and you first have to be a member of parliament to go up. And we fully believe that nothing can happen if our country isn't fundamentally democratic. And being fundamentally democratic is not only organizing elections, but it's making sure that each and every Cameroonian takes part in the process, is not disenfranchised by virtue of his tribe, by virtue of his social standing, by virtue of geography, that each and every Cameroonian participates in constructing this country, in choosing its leadership in one way or the other. And so those are the big areas on which we're working, and not on what Mr. Biya tries to make you believe, or what our social media journalists today try to make us believe. The problem is not who. The problem is how.
How?
And that is the answer we're trying to look for, and that is where we're working towards. You know, if tomorrow, Joshua Osih, if tomorrow I have a system that works, in which each and every Cameroonian recognizes him or herself, in which we all believe in, where we all belong to, a system that really makes us feel that this country is ours, and we can work towards building this country for our kids. Once that system is in place, you don't need to be the person in that system because you have attained your objective. Now, if there is nobody to carry that project, then you have to dedicate yourself to carry the project. But the important thing is the project.
And not the person.
And not the person carrying the project. Now, if nobody else wants to carry the project, of course, you must stand to carry that project so that you make sure that what you stand for, what you believe in, the values you care for are taken forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Joshua Osih.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And I'm looking forward to be here again soon.
Of course, we shall invite you some other time. And to you, televiewers, it was a pleasure being with you. Until next time on Hard Talk. Bye-bye.